Okay. Round two.
Round two. Well, hey everybody, this is John, and I'm back with Jason Pecor. He's from the On My Drive Home podcast. If you haven't checked him out yet, go check him out. He did a nice debrief on his last drive with me of the drive on his podcast, so I thought that was good. So we're going to get started out here. Today we're test driving a new release that I took last night. This is a full self-driving beta version 10.69.3.1 because the .1 is important.
Okay.
And here we go. So route that we're going to do today is just a quick one through the downtown area, starting out here at the Chippewa Valley Regional Airport. Jason, glad to have you along.
Thanks, John. Yeah, this will be interesting to ride in the car from this seat. Although thinking about it as after you asked me about doing this after my experience last time, I'm not sure if I'm more comfortable sitting here or if I was more comfortable sitting there where I could disengage. Or no, I'm just gonna have to trust you to disengage it in time if you have to.
We'll see what the car does. It may surprise us today. I'm not promising anything. So right here we should be in the right-hand lane. This is interesting. We're in the far left lane, which is actually a turn lane.
Yep.
So I'm just going to let the car go, but we do have a vehicle coming up behind us here. And our car does decide to go in front of him. No turn signal. There's a turn signal. So I'm sure that caused a little bit of confusion for the vehicle that was coming up on our right to continue straight through that intersection. And so, Jason, what did you think from your first drive so far, and what are some of your concerns for today's drive?
One of the things I noticed last time around was that probably the biggest takeaway I had was the car was driving probably more aggressively than I would have driven, particularly in neighborhoods and in areas where there are traffic things that I know about. Well, this will be interesting to see what happens here.
Yep, let's see what happens. Right at the last second. Look at that. Hold on a second.
Yep.
Bug report.
Okay.
Bug is reported. All right, go ahead.
Okay. When we were like in my neighborhood by my house, I know that there are cars that come through those uncontrolled intersections. There's even some where there are yield signs and people don't pay attention to those. So I tend to drive really carefully through those neighborhoods. And the car was just sort of going along doing its thing at top speed. I mean, the speed limit, but you know, hitting like it's a couple of clicks past it or whatever, where I probably wouldn't have driven that aggressively there. So that's sort of like domain knowledge or tribal knowledge that I've got from the area that the car doesn't have yet. Mm-hmm. And I mean, part of it's probably there aren't that many Teslas driving around in my neighborhood, right? It's probably different in actual neighborhoods in other parts of the country where there are a lot more feedback coming. But that's one of the things that I took away from that I felt like it was a lot more brash about decisions it was making and how it was driving than I would tend to be, knowing those neighborhoods and things like that. So it didn't do anything wrong. It wasn't like it was doing anything wrong there, but I would be more defensive. I felt like it could, like the car could have driven more defensively. Right.
I would agree. And going through the city streets or the residential streets where there were uncontrolled intersections, one of the concerns that I would have is going too fast and having a car be there, not knowing that your intent or your car's intent is to proceed through the intersection without a yield. And this car works on trajectory of other vehicles, so if it did see a car going through the intersection, it would stop, but it would be a very abrupt stop.
Right.
And everything on the back seat certainly would have ended up on the floor. So definitely is not a desired like driving characteristic.
Yeah. The other interesting thing that, as I was chatting about, so I shared the video from last time around with a handful of friends and colleagues, and one of my colleagues pointed out that he was really surprised you could engage full self-driving in areas like, take a school zone, for example. Mm-hmm. So we drove through a school zone, and it just kind of surprised him because he operates drones, and he said that with his drones, there's some limitations on where you can fly and how you can fly.
Airspace restrictions.
You just can't do it. It won't let you.
Yep.
And he just found it interesting that in a school zone, it would even allow you to do that. And I hadn't even really thought about that before. There's probably some good reasons behind it. But overall, I would say the drive went well. There were a couple times where we kind of saved it from potentially something bad happening. Other than that, the times I did disengage it were more about me being more conservative than the car was being at the time. It didn't actually do anything wrong, or we weren't in any danger that I perceived. I tend to drive more conservatively than it was.
Yep. No, that's a very good point. So here we saw in front of us a truck pull out, and our car automatically slowed down. So it is going 22, 23 miles an hour, just catching up the speed. So I did notice that the car was pulling out, and one thing that I like about this versus earlier versions is that it didn't wait to the last second and then slam on the brakes. It's a very gradual slowdown, felt very comfortable coming up to this traffic in front of us. So we're going to make a right-hand turn up here on Folsom Street.
Well, John, are there any, when you looked at the release notes for this version, were there any things you saw in there that based on your experience you thought, oh yeah, that was an issue, I'm glad to see that got taken care of, or oh, there's something I didn't think about, we'll see how that works today as we're driving?
Yeah, one of the things that I saw that I'm really excited to test out more with this version is lane discipline, as I call it, being in the correct lane for the route of navigation. So getting into lanes, turn lanes, etc., and making sure that we have we're not like doing last second lane changes. Now we did see an issue with that previously on the drive, just getting started here today, but I want to see that because I have had a couple of issues with that on previous drives, and some of those are well documented in videos that I've done.
Do you think some of that has to do with that particular intersection, as John mentioned before we really started recording, we had a small issue. They recently redid that, like this last summer. And is it just a database thing, the feedback there, or the maps information isn't up to date? And so that's something that just needs to be corrected with that kind of info?
It is to an extent, but some of the technology that's been improved, and we're going to make a left turn here actually. Let's see what happens. Some of the technology that's been improved is that the car will rely more heavily on lane markings and road markings, especially in intersections. And that's something that I saw in the release notes. So it should be reading what's on the road versus what it thinks is there and then making corrections for it.
Okay.
So what we just went through there were a series of parked cars on both sides of the road. And what I thought worked really nice in this car is, like right now we are hugged towards the right-hand side of the road, even though there's no lane marking in the center of the road. And through that area where there was traffic on both sides, we actually went right to the middle of the road. And we'll see it again here, going right between these two vehicles.
Yep.
Nice.
That was pretty good. The other thing too that, and maybe it's not any different, but with this version is I noticed, we'll let the car do its thing here first.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what it's going to do because it's got itself in a little bit of a jam for what it needs to do here. So it wants to go back on the route that we just took because we set this church as a destination, but it has to go backtrack and then get back on the road. So what I'm going to do is nudge the accelerator a little bit, force the car to get into this new road, and then it's going to redraw that.
This is kind of a weird little thing right here too, just in terms of this little triangle that you can see. It's a little odd.
All right, so we did hit a limit right there. It said auto steer's not available because we were trying to make a turn that was more than 90 degrees for the car.
That's pretty aggressive.
What I would have expected it to do is actually continue on here and then make a left turn and rejoin the route. So go ahead and take over at this point. We'll wait for full self-driving to become available again. Bug report. And notice that on the screen, our position froze, so it's actually not updating where we are.
There we go.
Good, perfect. Now we don't want to go back there to where we were. We want to continue on the route here to our right. So we're going to have to go into the waypoints and edit the trip and remove that waypoint. And then it should draw us for the correct route here. Steering wheel is available. Got a car coming up from the left-hand side, correction. Our car is a little hesitant there, waiting to see if that car would move in front of us, but we had plenty of space, so I gave it a little accelerator. We'll make a left turn here on Vine Street. This is a two-way stop, so we have no stop for the traffic coming in for the left or the right. Car's going to creep forward to check for traffic. Seeing nothing, it goes through the intersection, so that actually worked pretty well.
Now, it did seem like the car pulled out in right there where that car was coming.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of came to a stop as it was approaching, right? Which I would look at that and say, well, that's a little unnerving. Like once it had decided to basically block the lane, but there's still a car coming there. Mm-hmm. You had to like, nope, we need to go now. we're in the way.
Otherwise, we just sit in the front of the.
Right.
We would park there at that spot. The car would eventually work his way around us once he knew that we weren't committing to the turn, and then our car would continue on the route.
Yeah. Okay.
But to avoid that situation, I hit the accelerator.
Okay.
So coming up here, we'll make a right turn and then an immediate left turn. So the car is seeing that we do not have enough space to get into the turn lane to make the turn. And so it's just holding here, which is good. This is a two-way stop, so the cross traffic does not have need to stop here. Our car is going to move forward. We should get a creep limit here on the screen. There it is.
Oh.
That'll be as far as the car wants to go forward. I did see that. Yeah, that truck was turning a little tight.
Yeah, that wasn't anything that, I mean, he cut that corner with that trailer, so. I mean, nothing that Tesla did wrong in that situation.
No, in fact, it held its position just long enough to let the trailer get out of the way.
Yep.
So that's good. So what do we have up here? This is kind of interesting.
Oh, a roundabout.
Oh, we're going to bypass.
We're going to go around. Hey, it says we
are not messing.
We don't like roundabouts.
Smart car, but now we're on a street that really does not have any markings. A lot of shadows.
Yep.
Some parked cars.
And some rough, kind of a rough road too.
Rough road, yep. No beer cans, so we're good there.
No, technically, this is the route to go, though, to get to where we're going to be.
Good. So I think the car did really well through that section. Both the stop sign intersections, it made appropriate turns. Yeah.
This actually brings. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but this actually brings up an interesting question. So this is a pretty bumpy road. Does the Tesla, can it detect for that? Can it compensate? That is, like if you pull onto a road that's, let's say it's gravel or it's just bumpy, or like that one's just full of potholes and the typical kind of Wisconsin road after a lot of hard winters kind of a thing. Can it detect that through suspension and bounce and sort of mitigate that by slowing down or changing how it drives? Is that part of what the full self-driving is capable of doing?
As far as detecting for bumpy roads, no, it doesn't slow down at all. It just kind of pretends like nothing's going on there.
Tesla, that seems like a good thing to add. I'm just saying. Especially up here where rough winters and snow plows make for pretty rough roads sometimes.
Yeah. So here we're going on to a partially snow-covered, contaminated road. I thought the car did pretty well, but had that intersection been fully snow-covered during the turn, I think the car would have been a little aggressive on the turn.
This looks icy too.
This looks icy coming into the stop sign. I'm not really sure because I have had FSD out on snow-covered roads, but it was earlier versions, and it tended to not do too well.
So that's pretty impressive to me what we just did there, because to the left of us were some look like lilac shrubs or lilac bushes. Makes it hard to see that oncoming traffic, and I was curious pulling up to that because I know as a driver when you have that, it's challenging to see those cars coming from the left, and I was surprised at how early the car was able to detect oncoming vehicles. It was pretty cool.
It does a really good job at those type of intersections, especially since a couple of updates ago they
Right.
added the creep limit.
Yep.
And so you know exactly where the car is going to move forward to position itself to see traffic coming in. Before that, there's always this uncertainty because the car would creep forward, but there'd be crossing traffic. And so you're wondering if like your nose was going to stick out, too far.
Right.
So one of the things I noticed is that the car does slow for corners just based on the tightness of the corner, but it doesn't really obey the speed limit signs. When we have those road-specific types of speed limits like corners, the speed limit back there was 20 miles an hour on the turn, and we were down to about 22, 23, I think, which wasn't terrible, but normally it would not register that here on the screen. It just keeps the speed limit.
So that turn right there was an example of one that made me uneasy, because the car turned still pretty aggressively on that right turn, and there was another car coming out of that intersection, and we were close enough to that at the speed we were at to make me uncomfortable. Like I would have preferred
turning where the traffic was.
Yeah, turning, because the car that we turned past just now, I felt like if the turn radius got a little too wide on this thing, there's not a lot of time to react at that speed.
Sure.
It did it correctly, right? Again, this goes back to just the issue of aggressiveness, right? It wasn't wrong. And I think that's an interesting aspect of...
It's just more confident than you are.
It's more confident than I am, right? But I think that's worthy of talking about when you talk about broad adoption of this kind of technology, is if the car, even though it's doing it right, and let's say it would never make a mistake, if it's doing it so aggressively that as a driver you're like, nope, I don't want this, it may hamper or might slow adoption for people like me, unless I could tune that to be like, I just need you to be a little more chill when you're when you're turning. I don't know, that's just an interesting topic in terms of broad adoption of these technologies, I think.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point too, that the car makes enough mistakes when it drives that you know it could make a mistake at any time, and it's really hard unless you go through a situation, know how it behaves, and have done that several times to know that behavior is predictable.
It's going to be okay.
Yeah, then you can kind of gain some confidence. But coming up to that for the first time, when you've been through like a handful of issues in driving, to think it's going to know how to handle this situation, you just don't have that trust with it yet.
Right.
So we're coming up on a right-hand turn up here at the stoplight. So the car should navigate into the right turn lane. We do have a bike lane right here, and you can see the markings on the road. So it is picking up the bike lane.
Oh, interesting choice.
Interesting. It took it a little early. But I probably missed that on the map, actually. No, it was depicted on the map correctly, so I misread that. But the car did take the correct turn for the route. And here's a little bit of that bumpiness you're talking about.
Yep.
Right on through, just like it's not even there.
And I can understand that for a patch. I wouldn't expect it to adapt that dynamically. But after a sustained drive, like you're on a road that's just clearly bumpy for half a mile, would it adapt? Or could it adapt?
See that kind of ghosting right there?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it picked up an object, but it didn't know how to depict it on the screen.
Right.
It wasn't like a truck. It wasn't a mailbox or something. It's not something that was identified, but it still showed it.
Big dumpster.
Yeah. So that's new to this version. That's something that I haven't seen yet.
Did it show with any height? I wasn't looking down at the
No
screen.
height.
Just
a shadow.
Just the shadow, like a footprint.
Yep. So we're navigating through this little section right here. Not exactly in the center of the lane, as I would expect, but not doing terrible. We're going to make a right-hand hairpin turn, as you can see on the map, and the car has struggled with that in the past.
So this is one that we'll see if it's learned anything on this one.
Nice.
Hey, well done. All right. For you hardcore John Vandervoort fans that have been watching this channel, you will recognize that intersection where he had to intervene aggressively. Yes. One of the times it tried to do that. So that was good.
That was not good before. That was good this time.
Right. That was good this time.
Yep. I am noticing that the car, well, it was on...
Got a car. Someone walking in.
Someone walking, yeah. Yep, we're going to pay attention to that, but let the car pick that up. Good, good. Good. Yeah, so the car did notice that, did pick that, but on the map it was kind of, it looked like it was off-road from what the map showed, just for a little bit. So this is our destination, and that's all we have for this drive. We're just going to hit a few wrap-up thoughts here.
Yep. Actually, I have one related to what we just did there.
Okay.
Okay. Driving up, guy walking his baby in a stroller, right?
Mm-hmm.
Again, this comes down to those subtle differences between our intuition as humans and what the car is doing. And in a situation like that, particularly with no oncoming traffic, I would tend to veer way over as a verbal communication, or I mean as a visual communication to that person. I see you. I'm going to get way out of the way of you and your baby. Right? Yep. So even though the car might pass at a safe distance, like you didn't hit him, if I'm pushing my kid in a stroller and I see a car that just swerves over a couple feet, I might be like, I don't know, right? And those are just little things. Again, it's amazing what it's doing, but when you think about that what do we know, or how did those kinds of communication things that it's like, well, this communicates something more to that walker that I'm going to move way over. Like
that I see you.
I see you.
I see you, and I'm not a hazard to you.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, and that's something that people, like the nonverbal communications that you send as a driver of a vehicle. Other situations that we would encounter would be like coming up to an intersection and creeping out too far.
Right.
Well, the car coming up from the left-hand side, who has the right of way, may not know that your intention is just to have the camera see that car.
Right.
And it may think you're actually trying to pull out and create kind of an issue. So it does have some things. I would not call them safety issues, but I would say in terms of like being not being an obnoxious driver to other people, and not causing other concern or frustration to those around the vehicle.
Right.
Like there's still some things that need to be learned with the AI.
Yep. No, I agree with that. And I don't think it was unsafe. It's just, I think that whole side of it's really interesting to me. Like that there's that sort of meta communication side, or that meta decision making, that it's not, we didn't hit anything. There wasn't anything dangerous, but there's like this extra layer of things that we do as human drivers that communicate in different ways. It's, I've never had to think about this before doing this with you. So it's a really interesting topic of.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Well, Jason, I'm glad you could come along with the drive.
Thanks for the offer.
Great to have your thoughts. And so the next drive that we'll do together, you'll be back in this seat, and we'll have you experience the new update. Could still be 10.69.3.1, or we could be on version 11 by that point. So there is a version 11 update coming out, expected to be around the holiday season. We'll definitely be posting some more videos about that.
Sounds good.
All right.
All right.
Thanks for watching, everybody. And on your way out, if you could, just hit the like button, and we'll catch you in the next one.